Hello and welcome to With Winning in Mind. I'm your host, Troy Bassham, along with Lanny, the founder and legend of mental management systems. And today, we're going to talk about how mental management has evolved over the decades. So, when you first started this path and journey on the mental game, it's probably fair to say it's not today what it was when you first began this journey. So, many people watching this already know your story, the journey, but what they probably don't know is how it's evolved over the years. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, why don't we start in the beginning when you started teaching other people some of the early things you recognized and how it changed your perspective on taking it to the next level?
Well, when I began to be interested in the mental game, I was really only interested in improving me. I wasn't really interested so much, and I never thought about teaching it, or let alone this being a business. I was interested in finding a way to have consistency under pressure in tournaments, and so that I didn't repeat what happened to me in 1972 Olympics. And so that's when I started interviewing world and Olympic champions for a couple of years. And somewhere in the process of doing that, I realized that why doesn't everybody do this? I mean, it sounds like the logical thing to do. If you want to learn how to do something, it didn't make sense to me that you just worked on form all the time. You needed to not only know what you had to do to be able to hit a golf ball or shoot or anything that you want to do, but it made sense to me that you need to learn how to think at the same time. But technical instructors weren't telling you how to think, and none of my coaches were telling me how to think so much. I mean, Colonel Pullum kind of bounced around it a little bit, but it was not a subject that was that received its due, and I thought that it made sense to me to talk to winners, people at the top of their game, the top 5%ers, then they do 95% of the winning, about what they were doing about the mental game. And in the process, I crafted the mental management system, and it worked for me. It was a game changer for me. But I had no intention of sharing it with anybody else until I won the Olympics. As a matter of fact, I didn't even tell anybody about it. While I was, it was kind of my secret, my edge, and I wasn't going to let anybody else know what I was doing. But in the process of getting from 72 to 76, I became interested in finding out people that I trusted, people like David Kimes and some other guys, John Satterwhite, and people that I had confidence in, that I trusted. I would bounce some things off of them to see if they thought it was handy, and or was I just weird? Did this only work for me, or did it not work? Maybe it worked. It might work for somebody else. And so after the Olympics in '76, by that time I'd become world champion. I had shot some really high scores with this system, and I began to understand that it was acceptable to other people. Well, an amazing thing happened. Is I wanted to compete in the World Championships in 1978, and the Army wouldn't let me do it. It told me basically, give up shooting and you can stay in the Army, but if you want to continue to shoot, you got to get out. And so that's what I did. I got out of the military in order to compete in the World Championships in 1978. And so in order to finance my addiction to shooting, I had to find a way to earn a buck, and so I got some investors, and I opened an international shooting school. Well, Now I'm responsible to help people become better faster in shooting sports. And the first question that I had, the first revelation that I had is that what happens if you teach the mental game first? Happens if you teach, you don't wait until they have technical skill, you start teaching the mental game first. And so that's what I did. When students came in, I taught them my system, and at the same time I'm teaching form, I'm teaching the mental skills. And I noticed something that happened, really important that happened, is they learned form faster by having the mental game taught first. I didn't see that coming. And so people that you would normally expect it to take 6 years to get to a certain point. At the marksmanship unit, they told us that it takes about 6 years to be world class. It's how many hours does it take? It's like the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. He talks about 10,000 hours to be great at something. You want to be good at something, spend 5,000 hours. If you want to be great at something, spend 10,000 hours. What if you could be great at it with 4,000 hours? Or how would that be good? Well, that's what I discovered. I discovered that if you teach mental skills at the beginning of the time that you teach technical skills, you can shorten the amount of time it takes for you to master technical skills. The other thing that I discovered was that when my clients went to competitions, their tournament scores were much more consistent than what I had seen in myself and as it relate prior to mental management, as it relates to practice scores versus tournament scores. I mean, I spent years with practice scores being much higher than my tournament scores. Well, not my students. I mean, you're a really good example. The first time I took you to a tournament, it was a big tournament. And you shot right out of the gate. The first time I took you to Texas State Championships, you won the Texas State Junior Champion, and then the first national championship I took you to, you won that. Well, that's unheard of to win. I mean, there are a lot of good shooters in Texas, and you were able to learn really skills that should have taken you much, much longer. You were able to accelerate those because we at least taught some mental skills to you guys.
So break it down a little bit on what you're teaching in the beginning moving forward. I look at it, I think most people struggle because in the beginning, we're learning the technique. We're learning a foundation on how to do something correctly. Once you get to where you kind of know what you're doing, that intermediate advanced type level where I don't have to think about doing it so much, I kind of know what I'm doing. That's where I think people they don't know where to go from the thought process. They're kind of like still trying to do what they're doing when they were learning the sport, but now they're at an advanced state and they almost get in their own way. So what are the basic transitions that you have from, okay, now that you know what to do, here's what we're going to have to do it. Are we talking about start with principles? Are we talking about starting with a foundation of a mental system? What are some of the, is there an order of steps that you like to use to help people in a general sense?
If I were to start somebody off to learn how to shoot, and their goal was to get as good as they could possibly get, I wouldn't tell them how to put a sling on an arm or how to point a rifle or sight alignment, trigger control. I wouldn't start them out with that. I'd start them out with a performance model that we teach. I would let them understand that there are three components to this thing. There's what you think about. That's really important because there are helpful and harmful thoughts. and we're going to focus on the helpful ones and stay away from the harmful ones. And in essence, this is what my father told me. He didn't go into the detail that I would go into, but what he did say to me was that there's only one best way to do anything. And we're going to learn everything we can about that one best way. That one best way, it also included what you thought about. There's a best way to think, not just a best way to point the rifle, but there's a best way to think. And when learn about that what you think about is important, and then skill is definitely important. And at the same time you're teaching a skill, you teach them a little bit about self-image, and you let them know how self-image is created. You let them know that all three of these things are necessary. That would be the first thing I would teach them. And at the same time that we're teaching them safety and how to perform, how to hold the rifle and all the fundamentals of form, at the same time, you would teach the early stages of performance. And I would start out with the performance model because I think that's real key.
So no matter what sport, you would take that approach of here's how performance is generated. Of course, we're going to tackle the subconscious first because if you don't have skill, there's no sense in doing it. So you're going to work on that. But you're teaching them basic concepts of what they should think while they're learning skill, therefore building the conscious. At the same time, tell them kind of how to think about handling certain things so they don't hurt their self-image, but they build their self-image. Is that where you're going on the?
I would somewhere close to the first week, I would tell them the importance of the reinforcement phase of a task. Anticipation phase, action, reinforcement phase. I would definitely talk about that because the reinforcement phase, what's important about that is that you are responding to what happened instead of reacting to what happened. And so I would teach them the importance of responding. You shoot a good shot, you reinforce it. You shoot a bad shot, you learn from it. If I could just teach that so that people were not afraid to make a mistake, but they look forward to, if they did make a mistake, they would learn from it. What tends to happen? Here's what happens if you don't do this. If you don't do this and you work exclusively on form, you can spend 10,000 hours on form, and if you don't ever pay attention to the reinforcement phase or the anticipation phase of a task, you can be very, very good at being very bad. And this is what a lot of people do. And most of the people that come to training with us, they all say the same thing: I wish I'd known that sooner. Well, when is sooner? As soon as possible. Sooner is the beginning. At the beginning, you should learn three major things. The first thing is that performance is a function of three mental processes: conscious, subconscious, self-image, and how the performance model, how we structure it, how they related together.
Second, why those three things work, not just
that's right. Not just that there are three things, but why they work.
Which I think is the genius of how you organize that model. If you don't know what we're talking about, it's in this book, With Learning in Mind, lays out the conscious, subconscious, self-image perfectly in the model that he's got. So you're looking at just explaining that and how they three work. And then the second?
The second one is that everything we do in life has three phases to it: anticipation, action, reinforcement phase. That needs to be explained so that people understand that what you think about before the action matters, and it should be consistent. And consistency, mental consistency yields technical consistency. Technical consistency yields high scores. High scores is important to becoming as good as you can get. And when you start thinking that way in the beginning, you begin to realize that what you think about immediately after you hit a golf ball or after you shoot is just as important as what you're thinking about during the shooting or even before you shoot. And I gave no. I shot all through high school and all through college in my first 3 years on the U.S. team with no thought whatsoever about being uniform, about what I thought about at the beginning, and I had no concept for thinking about what I should be thinking about after I shot.
Yeah, because your thought process is just trying to shoot a 10, trying to score. And if I got a good score, I'm happy. If I didn't get a score, I'm upset. And it was all reactionary. But that anticipation, action, reinforcement phase is the foundation of the mental system.
That's right.
And then, all right, is the third one. I want to guess the third one. Is the third one the principal reinforcement, or is it something
Yeah,
different?
well, the third one is really if you have an understanding of the three phases of a task, and you have an understanding of the three mental processes, these are related, so that your conscious mind is a conscious circle issue. Your anticipation phase is a conscious circle issue. The action phase is a subconscious circle issue, and your reinforcement phase is a self-image issue. So you begin to understand the importance of building the self-image, and early on, and you start thinking about, that's where the principle of reinforcement kicks in, is that if there's one principle we ought to teach really early, is every time you think about something, talk about something, write about something, you become that. So be careful what you make sure you never think about, talk about, write about something that you don't want to have happen, because you are improving the probability it's like you. You could save years just getting that down early in the process.
Yeah, I think it's important to go through that in that order that you had mentioned, because without the model, you can't really do the foundation of a system. Without a system, you can't elevate and create the model of, the triad model that I'm talking about, which is ties into that principle reinforcement. Then you layer that with other principles that support what you're doing. I know when I was first in charge of coaching, the junior program at the AMU, my approach was teaching the parents two key principles from the very beginning, and the first one was that principle reinforcement, because I wanted them, because there's only two outcomes: the kid is happy or they're not. They come here, they practice for a couple hours, and when they leave, they're going to walk out with a smile on their face, or they're going to walk out feeling defeated. And I didn't want that car ride on the way home for them to hurt their self-image of who they're becoming as a shooter, because as a coach, I'm more concerned about who they're becoming, not who they currently are. Right now, who they are is someone that's trying to learn the sport. But if I want them to become someone who can do the sport, I need mom and dad to reinforce the right things. So teaching them that principle reinforcement, I felt, was a huge advantage in the beginning for the parent, just as much as it was for the athlete.
That's true, and I that was a kind of a transition for me. Was I realized that I learned the wrong way, and everybody tends to learn the wrong way. They learn about form at the expense of the other two very important parts of how performance is generated. And so how in the world they don't even discuss those until much later, and you waste all of that development time, because if you studied those in the beginning, you would shorten the amount of time it takes you to get to the top. And that's really what people want to know. They don't want to take the long, painful road. They want to take the short, efficient way to get there. And you're not going to get skilled without a lot of training. There's no question about that. But don't wait until you're trained physically before you start paying attention to the other two important ways that performance is generated.
Yeah, and if you do want to be lazy and shorten the amount of time, the best way to shorten the amount of time is to start the right way and work on all three areas at the same time, and understanding the importance of imprinting, understanding how to focus correctly once you in the beginning stage, everyone's going to start the same way. I'm thinking about what I'm trying to do. Once I get to where I can do it, I have to shift on how I think about it. And that evolves over time. And that's why the top 5% don't think like everyone else. Because at that point, they've not only evolved their technical skill to be so good at a high level on a consistent basis, but they have their thought process that's consistent as a high consistency rate at a high level. And then that also helps build a self-image that, hey, I expect to beat you. Why wouldn't I? So they go into competition with the attitude of good luck if you can beat me, where everyone else is going into competition with the attitude of I hope I do well. And if you're that guy and you're going up against a top 5%er, you have little to no chance to win. Little to no. I mean, maybe the guy could get sick in the middle of the competition, bows out, but you're not going to win because you're better than him if he's got all three areas. If you want to know more about what we're talking about, you can check out Lanny's book, With Winning in Mind. If you want to know more about what the 5%ers are doing to be successful, you can check out the book, Attainment, The 12 Elements of Elite Performance. We'll have a link in the description below on those two books. You can also purchase both of those on Amazon.com as well. And then we're going to go into a Patreon channel, talk a little bit more about how to do some of the concepts we talked about. So if you're not a Patreon member, consider being that. And if you like this content, please share it with somebody else. Hit that like button. It sure does help the channel. And we'll see you next time.